Out of the ashes of a truly devastating fire in Hong Kong comes this incredible story of survival, of unimaginable loss, and really of a single burning question. We're going to take you inside this tragedy, right through the eyes of one man, Mr. Lee, who was trapped in the middle of it all.
So, on November 26th, a fire just ripped through a residential building. You see that number on the screen, 150? As of this recording, that's how many lives have tragically been lost. It's a staggering number, right? Almost impossible to wrap your head around. But behind that number are mothers, fathers, children, friends, real people.
And one survivor, a man named Mr. Lee, he described the horror with this quote, and it is absolutely haunting. They just vanished into thin air. And, he's not talking about strangers. He's talking about people he grew up with, whose entire lives were just erased.
For Mr. Lee, this whole nightmare, it didn't start with some big explosion. It started with something so ordinary, the faint smell of smoke. He just figured, it's probably a neighbor's kitchen, Someone left a pot on the stove. Nothing to really worry about.
His first reaction was just pure calm. He wasn't panicking, he wasn't even rushing. His wife even called him from outside with their kids, but the threat, it just didn't feel real yet. So he just changed his clothes, totally unaware that he was standing right in the heart of a catastrophe that was about to unfold. And then, in an instant, everything changed. The moment he finally decided to leave, his apartment, his home, his sanctuary, it became a deadly trap. This was that moment, the point of no return. Can you even imagine that? You open your front door expecting, a clear path out, and instead you're just hit with a solid wall of thick, black smoke. In that single moment, he knew. He knew this wasn't just some inconvenience. His life was in very real, very immediate danger. Escape felt impossible. And see, this wasn't just a fire. This was a complete and total systemic collapse. Think about it. The fire alarms, they never went off. The sprinklers never activated. The emergency lights in the hallway stayed completely dark. And to make everything so much worse, the windows had been sealed up with this highly flammable foam for renovations, basically turning the building into a giant tinderbox. And a fire drill? Nope, hadn't been one in over 10 years. The residents were trapped by a cascade of failures. They really never stood a chance. So there he is, trapped in his apartment, believing he's all alone in this smoke-filled darkness. And then he hears something that would force him to make an impossible choice. He hears a human voice, crying for help out in the hallway. Let's just pause here for a second, because what would you do? Really? In a life-or-death situation, our primary instinct is self-preservation, right? You find a safe spot, you protect yourself, and you wait for rescue. But that's not what Mr. Lee did. He did the exact opposite. And his reason for it? Wow. It is not what you'd expect. It wasn't about trying to be a hero. He said he felt so profoundly alone, facing death there in the dark, that when he heard another voice, it just triggered this primal need to connect, to be with his own kind. He ran towards the danger, not just to save someone else, but to save himself from this crushing, overwhelming loneliness. And get this, the people he risked everything for, he didn't even know them. He'd only moved onto that floor 2 months ago. He actually found the elderly couple by touch in the pitch-black hallway and guided them back into his apartment, which was the only place he thought might be safe. So, the hours just drag on. The fire gets worse, the smoke gets thicker, the apartment gets hotter, and that hope of escape, it just starts to fade away. Mr. Lee began to truly believe these were his final moments, and he started sending what he thought would be his very last messages. This text exchange, man, it is just heartbreaking. He's telling his best friend to look after his children, saying his final goodbye. And his friend's reply, it just shows you how completely isolated Mr. Lee was in that moment. He was living through a nightmare that the outside world couldn't even begin to understand. And then a glimmer of hope. Through all that smoke and flame, a firefighter on the ground finally spots them, waving like crazy from the window. Salvation! It's here! But that feeling was immediately followed by just crushing despair. The ladder truck couldn't reach them. It was blocked by all the construction scaffolding around the building. They were seen, but they were still completely unreachable. This might be the most chilling moment of the whole story. His friend, hearing that the firefighters are there, naturally assumes he's safe, right? Great, you're out. And Mr. Lee's reply? No. Remember me. That's a message of absolute finality. That's a man accepting his fate and just asking not to be forgotten.
But that wasn't the end. Miraculously, the firefighters, they managed to break the ladder right through the scaffolding. And in this harrowing escape, with debris just raining down like rockets, Mr. Lai and his neighbors were brought down to safety. He was reborn from the ruins, but he stepped back into a world that was forever and completely changed.
So check this out. The very last photo on his phone before the fire was this one, his little daughter doing a somersault in their living room. A moment of pure, simple joy. The first thing he did after he was rescued was turn around and take a new photo, that exact same home now just swallowed by flames. The before and the after. The life that was and the life that was lost in an instant. In those frantic final moments, what did he think to grab? His passport? His wife's watch? His daughter's iPad? And his son's phone? He forgot his own wallet and his own ID. In what he thought were his last seconds on Earth, his mind was only on them. Later on, in the hospital, a nurse asked him a simple, innocent question. She said, "Are you in a hurry to get home?" And it was only then, in that quiet moment, that the full, devastating reality finally hit him. There was no home to go back to. It was just gone. So now, in the aftermath, as Mr. Li and his family try to somehow piece their lives back together, his focus has shifted. It's not just about survival anymore. Now it's about finding meaning and demanding accountability. Because for Mr. Li, the loss isn't about the stuff. He says he can work, he can provide for his family again. The one thing he can't replace, the one thing he needs, is an answer. He needs someone, anyone, to take responsibility, to explain why this was ever allowed to happen. And his search for answers, it isn't just for him. It's for those neighbors who vanished. He describes this community where everyone watched each other grow up, a shared history that spanned decades. This fire didn't just destroy a building, it incinerated the physical proof of an entire community's share of life. All that's left now are the memories.
And so we end with this. Mr. Li's incredible story of survival leaves us with his single haunting question, directed at those responsible, and really, at all of us. It's a demand for accountability that goes so far beyond this one tragedy, asking a question that lies right at the heart of our social contract. In the face of a preventable disaster, who is going to answer for the lives that were lost?